from Pretoria. Is everything all right? People talk, say things.
Hello?
Why didn't you tell me it was out of order? I suppose you think that's funny.
I'm not allowed out the front door.
Who says you weren't?
Them.
Who?
Them.
It was terrible out there. I could hear breathing.
We told
Every one of us, you can see it in your eyes.
Come now, Frederick. Do you dream about unholy things?
I really don't like what's going on here. There's something wrong, and that's a fact.
Wait. What did you dream last night? This manifestation. You must be delivered from evil.
I don't think you're gonna love my new job.
From the department and a good paycheck. Why else?
You know what I've always talked about.
Remind me.
Well, think about it. You should know me better than anybody. We are engaged.
Well, I know what you've always talked about doing, but it's so impractical. A little boy's dream.
Thanks for the show of confidence.
It's just not realistic. These days, particularly.
Well, it's what I'm doing.
A private detective. You're going to be a private detective.
Not going to be. I am one.
Did you even think about asking your Uncle Louis for a job?
Not really.
I mean, why? Why did you quit the department anyway? Over that awful shooting? These things happen.
I hadn't told her the whole story yet. What really transpired up at Nitty's handbook. But now I did. By the end of it, she was angry.
They just came into Barney's and grabbed you. Didn't even tell you what they were up to. Louses, bums. And I suppose they expect you to testify for them at the Nitty trial.
I will testify for them.
Then why quit then? If you'd stayed with the department and testified, you could get something out of it. Why help them cover it up and get nothing?
I am getting something out of it. A private investigator's license and a gun permit. So I can do business. Mayor Cermak himself guaranteed it.
Oh, Mayor Cermak. Well, that's different.
I told her about the Cermak meeting, and it impressed her. And I told her about the Nitty hospital visit, and that scared her. But when I told her about General Dawes, she perked back up.
Why don't you take advantage of the generous offer? $3,000 is like $1 million.
$3,000 for supervising pickpocket security at the fair would be easy money. It'd make my first year in business a rousing success, even if not a single other client walked in the door.
And it would be just the beginning. You get something much better out of Dawes and your uncle. You could get a real job with a bank or a business or something.
Janie, I do have a real job. I am in business. I'm president of the A1 Detective Agency. I'll be first in the yellow pages.
Where do I fit in? What about the house we talked about?
Look, I still have the nest egg money in the bank. I managed to start up the A1 without dipping into that, thanks to Barney's largesse.
How does Barney factor into this?
I told her about my arrangement with him for the office space, playing night watchman, about the furnishings he'd provided, the works.
He's a good friend.
Give me a year to get my feet under me and we could start looking for that house.
It's not like there aren't foreclosures available.
Happy now?
Happy. Nathan, you know I only want what's best for you.
Although edited for television, tonight's thriller contains scenes of suspense and violence which may be unsuitable for young viewers. Parental discretion is advised.
Observations with Robert Meyer Burnett.
Well, greetings, imagination connoisseurs. Once again, it is I, your Duke of Dope Discourse, your master of fun and wonder, your viceroy of verisimilitude, your sommelier of sci-fi and cinema, your evangelist of the imagination and the perhaps never to be defined existential Mr. Rogers. That's right. It's been a while, but I'm back. I don't know why. Once again, this stream is just being cut off at the knees. It keeps flickering. Have no idea why, ladies and gentlemen. It's happening again. I apologize for that. How annoying. But anyway, I'm back. I haven't been around for a while. I apologize. I'll be back around more often. Had some things to do. Working on White Devils. Got the new sound mix on White Devils. We got it all put together. I watched it last night, the new file all the way through. It looks really, really good. As you know, we're going to have an online... I was going to do it back in August, but due to some health issues and things, I wasn't able to get the new sound mix from our sound designer. But he did a fantastic job, and it sounds amazing. And we're going to debut it. We're going to have an online world premiere. And it'll be probably mid-October. And we're going to charge like $8 or something for it. But it'll be a day, and you'll be the first to see it. Anybody who wants to see it will be able to. It'll be streamed off Vimeo. Hopefully, it'll support the film, support independent filmmaking, and any proceeds that we generate with this online premiere, we're going to use to put it in theaters. So it's really exciting. And of course, True Noir, another one of my projects, you can get at truenoir.co. Observations, and I'm coming at you imagination connoisseurs, you members of the Post-Geek Singularity community. This is Robservations, episode number 1059. I don't take pleasure disliking things. I mean, my default position is I tend to like most things. I like most things there are varying degrees of like in me. That's what I prefer. I prefer to like things. I don't like to not like things. Like today, I went to the Mobile Suit Gundam, the Gundam Base mobile event. I put pictures up on my Instagram in Corona. It was a lot of fun. It's going to happen tomorrow if you live near Corona, California, and you're a Gundam fan. There was a long line to go through their little Gundam shop. People were building Gundams. They had... if you like Gunpla, it was a lot of fun. See, I like that. I like Gundam. Now, I'm a Universal Century Gundam guy, so I don't love all Gundam, but I've liked certain side stories. I like Gundam Seed. I like Wing Gundam. That was an alternate universe Gundam. I like that. I like Turn A Gundam. I like things. And if you look at television now, we are getting some incredible TV, especially in the prequel space. We have Andor. We have Alien Earth, which is... Jury's still out for me if I love it or not, but it's at least really interesting, and every episode is full of compelling ideas. I do not come away from my time with that show feeling like I've been cheated out of something, like intelligence. It's combining the idea of artificial life and what are the bioethics behind that? What are the ethics behind bringing alien life forms to Earth and experimenting on them? There's a lot of corporate greed, which has always been a part of the Alien franchise. There's a lot of really interesting stuff going on there. So, and then if you think of one of the great prequels of all time, it would have to be Better Call Saul. Done by the creators of Breaking Bad, one of the greatest TV shows ever. Better Call Saul is an extraordinary achievement as a prequel. And one of the things that all three of these shows have in common is the thought and the intelligence that is put behind them. Now, they might not be your cup of tea. A lot of people, there's been plenty of people opining that is Andor. I mean, I really thought that Red Letter Media did a great video about Andor, and I would encourage everyone to watch it. But the idea is, why is it that we have loved the things that we've loved? And when it comes to the Star Trek franchise, next year, 2026, is its 60th anniversary. Star Trek has been with us for 60 years. Now, here's the thing. I am not here to tell you whether or not Star Trek, the original series, or as we would call it, Star Trek, is good or bad. I don't have to tell you that because we're 60 years on and we're still getting Star Trek. What kind of Star Trek? Well, we'll talk about that. But history has decided whether it's good or bad, and history has spoken. And for me, I've seen Star Trek grow and evolve throughout my entire life. I mean, it literally started before I was born, but I was born soon after. And I became a fan of it in the early 70s when I was a wee lad, 5-year-old wee lad. And since I've watched it grow and I've watched it evolve. And what's interesting for me is I was there almost at ground zero. But certainly when Star Trek went into strip syndication in 72 and became the phenom that it is, the first Star Trek convention was also in that year. So when people, it's really interesting when people tell me now online, I mean, they don't know me really, but, well, don't watch it, it's not for you. Well, it's been for me for most of my life. Until it became a horribly written shadow of its former self. An embarrassment to anyone with any modicum of intelligence or intellect about them. It's an embarrassment. It's become an embarrassment, and Strange New Worlds might be the biggest embarrassment of all because it's hiding under a cloak of respectability. And yet, it is probably one of the most insulting science fiction television shows ever made. But we'll get to that. I'm here to share letters from you. Now, one of the things I got that's very exciting, you know where you love her. Our own Major Chai Chai has completed her giant crocheted Death Star, which, by the way, lights up. It's got lights in it. A crocheted Death Star that's massively huge and lights up. But I'm not going to show it tonight because I realized she sent me a bunch of pictures and videos that I want to cut into a thing and put it up on the channel. But I'm going to do that probably tomorrow. So you'll see that soon, but it's very exciting. What a project. And that was a project completely born out of this channel. So the first letter that I'm going to read is from Terrell Williams. Terrell Williams. And he wrote this letter to me on August 21st. Thursday at 7 a.m. Captain's log. Stardate 2508.21. The Malcolm X is in orbit around the planet Sigma Iosha 2, where I've just attended an important meeting with the heads of the 5 families. Agreeing with crime boss Bella Oxmix and his consigliere Jojo Krakow, we have all concluded that Strange New Worlds is an abomination. A complete embarrassment to Gene Roddenberry's legacy and therefore must be disavowed. For this to happen, there must be a civil trial. Hopefully, the 7-member jury will send this blasphemous series into the Phantom Zone. My task now is to locate enough brave witnesses willing to testify in our favor. R.M. Burnett, are you interested in testifying in the trial of the 23rd century? The trial starts in 3 days. Well, I already missed that date. The trial starts in 3 days on board my vessel. An AI hologram of Johnny Cochran will preside as the judge, and he's already started with the catchy one-liners. Are you ready for some fun? Then set your phasers for stun. So please come and get a piece of this action, Rob. Hello, Rob. I hope your world is still amazing, for I am doing well myself, still majestically thriving, still magnificently surviving. My precious time is limited this time around, so this letter must be brief. Strange New Worlds. OMG! Exclamation point, exclamation point. What have they done to my beloved Star Trek? Fair to say that the writer, producers, and showrunners of this incarnation either have no clue about the essence of what Star Trek is, or simply they just don't care. How on earth do they get away with this? Where are Roddenberry's children and grandchildren? Don't they have a say? Since 2009, Star Trek has become a nothing burger without the pickles. Never ever thought I would utter those words. Roddenberry, D.C. Fontana, Leonard Nimoy, Gene L. Kuhn, and Harlan Ellison must be rolling in their graves. Sigh. Growing up in the 1970s watching reruns via syndication, I absorbed just about everything Trek, from those amazing tech manuals and blueprints to the Mego action figures and playsets. And who could forget those cool Starlog magazine articles? Original Trek was more than a science fiction TV show to me. It was an experience with several life lessons which have stayed with me to this very day. For example, the episode Arena challenged me to never judge a situation until I've learned all the facts. Space Seed taught me 2 things. Superior ability breeds superior ambition, along with social occasions are only warfare concealed. Amok Time demonstrated that having is not so pleasing a thing, after all, as wanting. I'm going to continue that. It is not logical, but it is often true. From the Savage Curtain, I learned from Lieutenant Uhura to never fear words. And City on the Edge of Forever showed me to always, always look both ways when crossing a city street. Well, my time is up, Rob. I have a Starfleet briefing with General Snarky J, which shouldn't last more than 3 minutes. Starfleet intelligence agents are investigating a dilithium crystal smuggling operation within Cloud City. My cousin, Lando Calrissian, his boo, Lieutenant Uhura, and his best friend, Han, better not be involved in this. I'm laughing out loud. Thanks for taking the time out to read my letter. Keep up the awesome work. And the trial, there will be a Fizbin tournament open to all senior officers, but be warned, Captain Grace Randolph hates to lose. Psych. Captain Terrell Williams, USS Malcolm X, NCC 1965. Well, Captain Terrell, you and I park our shuttlecraft in the same shuttle bay. You know, this week's episode, 4.5 Vulcans, was the episode they showed the clip of our crew being transformed into Vulcans with a serum. I thought that clip was terrible. And this, the 8th episode of 10 this season, season 3, to me might very well be the very worst episode of Star Trek ever made. Yes, worse than Spock's Brain, which, if you watch it, has many more interesting ideas than what we just saw last night or yesterday. But you know what Spock's Brain and Plato's Stepchildren and The Children Shall Lead is? And The Children Shall Lead, to me, is the worst episode of Star Trek, the original series, by a wide margin. But Star Trek used to have sincerity. Even when episodes weren't great, like in Spock's Brain was not great, they were sincere in what they were trying to do. They weren't breaking character. They weren't breaking the fourth wall. They weren't falling back on modern-day colloquialisms in the future, in the 23rd century. And if you look at something like Spock's Brain, I'm not going to argue that it's a great episode of Star Trek. But I will say that when you're watching it, as goofy as it might be, with the women being the givers of pain and delight and the men sort of used for breeding stock whenever necessary, and then there was this ancient civilization that provided this teaching machine, there was enough in there that was thought-provoking and compelling. I mean, having Spock walk around brainless was a little, well, brainless. But it was an interesting... It had some interesting ideas, but more importantly, you believed. I mean, certainly as a kid, before I was as discerning as I am now, clearly, I didn't know the difference, as a young whippersnapper. I just loved Star Trek, but what Star Trek allowed me to do is I got older and continued to watch the episodes. They resonated more with me. There was a lot more in them that I hadn't understood as a child, but as I watched them, especially growing up, the Star Trek franchise grew with me. And it was interesting to understand Star Trek as a child and to realize when you watch it now, you can go back and look at episodes that are almost 60 years old that you've watched 100 times, and there's still something in them to be compelling viewing. And as Captain Terrell pointed out, Mr. Williams pointed out, the interesting thing about Star Trek was, and people forget this because no one remembers history, is Star Trek inspired one of the really fervent fan bases. And it created what Larry Nemeczek told me were called backgrounders, where fans were starting to draw star maps and blueprints. And of course, in 1975, and Star Trek was only 9 years old, and it had been only in strip syndication for 3 years, Franz Joseph published his technical manual and his Enterprise blueprints, and they were released by Bantam. Was it Bantam or Ballantine? I think it was Ballantine, actually. They released these in-universe blueprints, and they weren't canonical, but they were certainly interesting, and there was a lot of work. When you look at those original blueprints and you look at the tech manual, really interesting, elevated material. Star Trek captured the imagination of very smart people and created a fan base of people that didn't just watch. They weren't passive viewers. I mean, some people were, but a lot of the fan base became active participants, and they were creating things that didn't exist. whether it was slash fiction, KS fiction, if you know what that is, you know what that is. Songs, obviously poster magazines. Talked to Doug Drexler about that. There were all kinds of things that Star Trek inspired people to do. And then, of course, all the career paths people chose, whether it was being engineering or a doctor, or because Star Trek provided compelling food for thought that resonated beyond just an hour-long episode of television. There was something about it, something in it, about the characters, the camaraderie, the stories, the optimistic future. But the one thing Star Trek always was sincere. And when Star Trek made the leap to the big screen, now you can see Star Trek the Motion Picture, and probably the best version it's ever going to be with the 4K Director's Edition. But when you watch that and you think about how, okay, a 60s, a lot of people can't watch Star Trek now. I talk a lot about how you have to teach yourself how to watch movies. Watching films and shows, you need a certain literacy. There is a language you have to understand to watch these things. And if you look at where Star Trek the Motion Picture took off from where Star Trek the original series ended and the animated series ended, it's a pretty astonishing leap. Especially now when the film is, Star Trek the Motion Picture was launched without really being finished, as we all know. The story's been told a million times. But when you go back and you watch the film now, Star Trek the Motion Picture is aspiring to something. It's my favorite Star Trek movie, still to this day. And while I don't think the director's edition, they should have let me in the edit room, I would have fixed it and made it perfect. But it's not quite perfect. One day I'll do my own cut, and it will be perfect. But, come at me, bro. I'm right. But the thing is, when you watch Star Trek the Motion Picture, it's a movie that is punching above its weight class. It's aspiring to inspire. It's aspiring to make us look up and see that there is still awe and wonder in the universe. And Star Trek has always done that until now. There is no sincerity in modern Star Trek. Modern Star Trek is a franchise that, unlike someone like Tony Gilroy, why is it that Star Trek can't get an Oscar-nominated writer-director, an auteur, to come work on the TV shows? Why can't that happen? Watching this week's episode, one of the things about any science fiction, fantasy, or horror show, I always talk about this on the show, how these flights of fancy get one big ask. Hellraiser, you believe the Cenobites. The movie makes you believe that, okay, these lords of hell, these S&M leather gods or demons, whatever, they exist. I'll believe it. You made me believe. Well, one of the things that Star Trek always did with its made-up science, you believed in the transporter. It was an elegant, it was a way to solve the problem of having to leave the ship in a shuttlecraft in every episode. It was a production mandated creative problem that they came up with a very elegant solution. Now, the thing about the transporter was, because it was given rules, line of sight, it couldn't beam through certain storms. Sometimes it would make a doorway to an alternate universe. But you believed in it. Because it had rules, even though it was fictional and it probably will never exist, because it was defined by its limitations, you believed in it. Now, I would say the modern age of Star Trek, when it comes along, what Star Trek 09 did was turn the transporter magical. It ruined the credibility of this fictitious machine. And you can say, oh, Rob, what does it matter? Well, when you're dealing with, and I keep talking about this, and you've heard me say it a lot if you watch this channel, our favorite fantasy shows, the things that we love. Just think about your favorite thing right now. Think about whether it's Lord of the Rings, whether it's Back to the Future, whether it's Star Wars. These things, you love them because they made you believe. Somewhere in your heart and somewhere in your mind, these things captured both. They meant something to you. And part of the reason was because how much thought and effort was put into them. For instance, you look at a movie like Back to the Future. Back to the Future has one of the best screenplays ever written because everything works like clockwork. The movie sets up expectations, and then when the expectations are paid off, they're done in a really interesting way, in a different way, in a way you might not expect. But you know that Bob Gale and Robert Zemeckis, when they wrote that script, they had you, the audience, in mind because they knew that you, the audience, was smart. They knew you were going to go along with the ride that they were going to take you on. They knew it because they knew they had earned your respect because they put the time and the thought into that screenplay. And the film was so beautifully executed, even though it didn't have the easiest time getting to the screen. Now, that is something that we can least, that's the least amount we can expect with people that are given millions of dollars to, sorry, I have to plug my phone in, millions of dollars to make entertainment. And when it's good, when Peter Jackson gets a hold of Lord of the Rings and Fran and Philip will write those scripts with him, and he works on those movies in New Line, Bob Shea had the vision to let them make all three movies at once, even though that was a very iterative process. Look what we get on the back end. You know, Lord of the Rings is still the number one trilogy. And there's a reason for that. Now, we have almost 60 years of Star Trek, so we can compare and contrast. There's always been great Star Trek and not so great Star Trek. For me, the original series is about 75% good to great, with 25% not so good to good. Next Generation, I'd flip that. I'd say 25%, maybe 30% of Next Generation is absolutely great. A lot of it's good. And then probably about 25% not so good. But there's a lot more episodes. There's basically 99 more episodes of Next Gen than there is of the original series. And it goes from there. But all the way up from 66 to 2005, Star Trek was sincere. It was made by people who believed. It was made by people who really put a lot of time and effort into what they were doing. That hasn't been the case since 2009. Alex Kurtzman, who controls the franchise now at his company's secret hideout, he'd never watched an episode of Star Trek before he was hired as the co-writer on Star Trek 09. Now he runs a franchise. Director J.J. Abrams said he never liked Star Trek as a kid. Too intellectual, he said. When he went out on tub thumping on the promotional tour for Star Trek 09, he was very happy to tell everybody who would listen that he didn't like Star Trek. And yet Paramount turned it over to him. He's a flim-flam man, that J.J. Abrams. Hey, got a job, got paid millions of dollars. His company, Bad Robot, ran basically a Star Trek grift, which they're still running even to this day. Alex Kurtzman now runs the franchise. He'd never seen an episode before 2009, and if you watch Star Trek Into Darkness, which he co-wrote, it's very apparent that he'd never watched Star Trek. But this week's episode, 4.5 Vulcans, I never thought that I would watch. Look, I'm not going to opine. Look, even Jessie Gender and I are simpatico. Like, the thing about Jessie Gender and I is even she, sometimes we don't necessarily see eye to eye, but she's looking at Star Trek through a different lens than I do. But in her review of the episode, she nails everything wrong with the just ungodly swill that, think about that. When you watch Star Trek's episode this week, millions of dollars were spent, millions, to make that episode. All those actors and the writing staff, you talk about insincere. These people clearly had never watched any original series. They certainly didn't know anything about the Vulcans. And once again, Captain Pike and Mr. Spock are, I don't know, do the writers just dislike them? My friend Dan Coyle keeps saying that the writers clearly hate Pike, and they write Spock as what, because everybody in the writing room? Look, I would say that everyone in the writing room was probably on the slow bus to elementary school when they were kids, based on the garbage that they've churned out this year. There's no sincerity in it. Where is a sincere episode of Star Trek? I mean, you go back and you watch seasons 4, 5, 6, and 7 of Deep Space Nine, it's like you're living on another planet. The level of writing is so good compared to what we're getting now. And when we have Better Call Saul, and we have Andor, and now we have Alien Earth, and the excellent third season of Foundation, as other examples of great science fiction on TV, how is it that Star Trek has fallen so far? I don't know. Is it valuable? Are people watching this? Some people like it, and I don't begrudge them. Some people's first experience with Star Trek is going to be this, which is unfortunate because like so much of our culture these days, it has been tremendously dumbed down. What we need is things that elevate. Like when I was a kid, Star Trek elevated my consciousness. It exposed me to a lot of concepts like Captain Terrell was talking about for the very first time. It instilled in me an attitude of questioning and wonder and awe that still sticks with me to this day. If I had children right now, I wouldn't let them watch Strange New Worlds. It's an insulting show that isn't about anything. It has nothing at all of relevance to say to humanity, especially today. You know, there are so many. I read the news every day. There's so much fodder for great Star Trek. Pick any news story. You know what Peter Gallagher said in The Player. You know, he just picked up a newspaper and said, "Oh, we can make a movie out of any news story." And he says, "Look, this story about underprivileged kids who get lifted up in the ghetto. You put Jimmy Smits in it, and you have a sexy sand and deliver." Well, he was right. He was right. Michael Tolkien and Robert Altman were right. And Peter Gallagher's character. You can find Star Trek episode ideas anywhere, but the writers of the show don't seem to be looking for them. Instead, they give us just what? I don't know. A show, this episode, no science, no credibility, no sincerity. Anyway, what do you guys think? Let's see. Let's go back and a lot of super chats. A lot of people are firing and stuff. Jason Fox, the Great, celebrates 18 months of membership. Thank you, Jason Fox, the Great. Now, we're going to do no membership call tomorrow. Roberto just got back from Japan, and I can't wait. Got to give him some time to rest and have his internal clock get back to Pacific time. So get in on that, and we will. So next week, we'll have a member call, just in case anybody wonders. Major Chai Chai has been a member for 19 months. And she says, "Did you see the pictures and videos I sent you of the Death Star project? P.S. Glad you're back." Well, as I said at the top of the show, yes. And we're going to have a special section probably tomorrow to display your amazing feat of, what is that, 6 feet? I mean, you could jump off the roof of your house and land in that Death Star and nothing would happen. Maybe the lights would go out. 1001 Johnny says, "Being that this is a Star Trek rant, I should be adding to this list, but for now, I shall remain with my initial 4 recommendations." Ultraman, the mysterious dinosaur base, the Pearl Defense Directive, the monster is a giant shooting star, the alien, a giant star, the alien, Scholar, and I. That's so funny. Anonymous sends in a tip and says, "Okay, this is off topic, but did you see the Ryan Gosling film First Man?" I did. I really liked First Man. I didn't love First Man, and I thought Ryan Gosling, like Neil Armstrong himself, I never met him, but he was known to be sort of aloof. But I really, really did like Damien Chazelle did First Man, and I really did enjoy it. Growing up around the astronauts, I feel like it does a good job illustrating the lives and the tragedies. I feel like Nolan could do a great film on the space race someday. Your thoughts? I would agree with you, but I would also say that some of my favorite movies, my first would be The Right Stuff. If you've never seen The Right Stuff, it's about the dawn of America's space program, and it details the Mercury astronauts. It's 3 hours and 15 minutes long. It's one of my favorite movies of all time, maybe in my top 5. It is wildly entertaining. It has an amazing cast. And, shh, don't tell anyone, but a certain boutique home video label's going to put it out in 4K. Shh, with a new Atmos mix. You didn't hear that from me, though. But I'll tell you something. While it's an alternative history, If you're a fan of astronauts and you're a fan of the space program, Ron Moore's For All Mankind series is one of the best television series of all time, I think. One of the best science fiction shows of all time. But it really does a great job of capturing, as a matter of fact, even though it's totally fictitious, here's if you want to have a really ambitious day celebrating the American space program, here's what you got to do. You got to get up at like 6 a.m. and make yourself breakfast. And then you watch The Right Stuff. All 3 hours and 15 minutes of it. Then you watch For All Mankind, the TV miniseries For All Mankind. And I think you watch it up until, I want to say episode 6. And then you watch First Man. And then you watch 7 and 8. And then you watch Apollo 13. And then you watch the rest of For All Mankind. And I'm telling you, it's a great day. There's also, if you want, you can have the Apollo 11 documentary. Watch that too. And then watch For All Mankind, the actual documentary of real NASA footage. And then watch, all 4 seasons of For All Mankind after. But, that's a fun thing to do. Royston Bailey says, for TNG, tensions between the network, Berman, and Pillar resulted in top-tier TV drama at times. New Trek has Klutzman's Iron Grip and Vision of Slop. Well, remember, there really weren't any tensions between the network and Rick Berman. They loved him because he ran a tight ship. He kept Next Generation on time, on budget. As a matter of fact, Rick Berman always ran a tight ship from 1987 to 2005. The only time they really ran afoul of the network was during Enterprise. But during the time of Next Gen, the real problem was internal. They had a real problem with the first, until Michael Piller came on board in season 3 of Next Gen, they had a real problem figuring out what the hell they were doing. Also, remember, the writer's strike crippled the second season of TNG. So that's never, we shouldn't forget that. Shouldn't forget that. Then we've got the real Thomas Logan says May 22nd, 1980, Kubrick's The Shining opens. Did you see it that night, or was it the VHS in 81? Thoughts on the film? Were Jack and Stan Oscar snubbed? No, I saw the film at the UA 150 Theater downtown, where I saw so many great movies. I didn't see it opening night, though, because I still had a problem getting people to take me to R-rated films. So, I don't know Jack and Stan. I think Stanley Kubrick's my favorite director. And I think in the oeuvre, this will probably get me, people will be asking, what do you mean by this? The Shining is Kubrick's B movie. It's lesser Kubrick. As a matter of fact, I think it's very Kubrickian, but it might be my least favorite Kubrick movie. Only because I don't think it has nearly the rewatchability of something like Barry Lyndon, which I could watch forever. I mean, but starting with The Killing, I can watch Kubrick's films. I've watched them all over and over and over again. The Shining is the movie I've watched the least. Because it is, in its intent, there's not a lot to chew on. It's a horror movie. And it's a Kubrickian horror film that has a lot going for it. And when you can't just call it a horror movie when it's Stanley Kubrick. And I really like the performances, but I think Stanley Kubrick was snubbed far worse for movies like 2001, Doctor Strangelove, Clockwork Orange. And Jack Nicholson, he maybe was the most Jack Nicholson of all time in The Shining. I don't think that they were robbed of Academy Awards, though. I don't think they were robbed. So yeah. Although I did watch the movie endlessly on VHS. So, Alvaro Zinos is in the chat, and he fires in a super chat. Very nice, thank you, sir. Alvaro says Star Trek episodes like Threshold, Sub Rosa, Code of Honor, Cat's Paw, etc. were all bad from the inside. They're misfires. Recent bad Trek episodes are bad from the outside. They're blanks. Ooh, I love that. But you know what? Even Threshold, Sub Rosa, well, Code of Honor, not so much. Cat's Paw. They were, I mean, Sub Rosa's nutty. You know, it's like a bodice ripping romance novel, but there is something interesting at its core. Same with Threshold and Code of Honor. People forget, even though it's a terrible, borderline racist episode, it is about a matriarchal society, which is kind of a twist at the end. You find out that Lutan and his crew, they seem to be in charge, but then you find out not really. And that's interesting. And look, Cat's Paw was their overt Halloween episode, but like you pointed out the other night, it was written by Robert Bloch, who wrote Psycho. So it does have, and it has at the end a great reveal, a great alien reveal. Not great episodes, but I love what you're saying. They're misfires. Bad Trek episodes are bad from the outside, that they're blanks. Yeah, they really are. Major Chai Chai says, the big Death Star does not light up. It's the smaller one that does. Uh-oh. I wanted the PGS input on the light up one. Was it too much, not enough? Well, you're going to get that because we're going to do a whole thing on your Death Stars. I didn't realize that. I thought it was the same one. I didn't know. Royston Bailey says, Rob, if Star Trek was a person, what crimes would Kurtzman be guilty of? It's sad how many fans have succumbed to saying Strange New Worlds is fun. Yeah, but I think that's a product of our modern age, which is too bad. Look, I think what he's guilty of insincerity. There's no effort. You know, it's really interesting. The reason Strange New Worlds exists is because Anson Mount was he was the most Star Trekian character in Discovery. He shows up and it's like, oh, here's what a Star Trek character is like. And he carried with him gravitas. Look, Anson Mount is an incredible actor. I mean, if you watch Hell on Wheels, the guy's incredible. And when you watch the episode that they put on yesterday, you're like, really? You know, I mean, I understand he took time off because he wanted to spend time with his newborn and all that, which I really respect. But what these writers have done to him is, you know, I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't know what to say. But they you know, season 1 had some really interesting episodes, like when they ripped off Ursula K. Le Guin. That was a pretty good episode. Wasn't great, and they should have given her credit. But Alex Kurtzman did say in an interview, yes, we were inspired by Ursula K. Le Guin. No, you stole her story without accreditation and without any money changing hands. So, yes. But that's what I would say. It's insincere, and they haven't put in the effort. It is a lackluster effort that was put in. And it's unfortunate. So, let's see. B Things says, DS9 couldn't have deconstructed Star Trek if it didn't actually believe in Star Trek. That's a great point. I mean, first of all, in order to do comedy or parody episodes, you have to earn those. And again, if you look at the original series, the great comedic episodes of the original Star Trek were, say Trouble with Tribbles, Shorely was sort of comedic, and A Piece of the Action was really about the danger of Earth contaminating a culture. You know, and the whole idea of the Prime Directive, the non-interference idea, was born out of our own Earth colonization debacles when we would decimate indigenous populations with our diseases that they had, or our liquor, that they had no defense against. And leaving behind an Earth book, I mean, is it silly that they, apparently a society, would speak English or decipher the book and figure out, I mean, that made sense. I saw It to Serve Man. Sure they would. The Sigma Iotans, they're very imitative people. They would figure it out. But that they base their whole culture around it, that's the big ask. That's a silly idea. But within that episode, there is sincerity and conviction. And they lean into it. And they never do anything at the expense of the characters. The humor is all situational. And it comes out of character. It doesn't denigrate the character. Spock has been denigrated since the first season, actually since Discovery. I mean, he's been jobbed. So, yeah, not so good. Fearless Wolf 5928 says, Rob, DS9's In the Pale Moonlight and Inter Arma and Silent Lieges are my favorites. Sisko's moral collapse and Bashir's line as a 24th century Rome where law falls silent in war show the true cost of survival. Absolutely. And that's what Star Trek does at its finest. It is an action-adventure, science fiction, allegorical show. It's a show that is reflecting back upon us, dealing with our world today in an interesting but always intelligent fashion. Never more so than during the Dominion War on Deep Space Nine. How does a utopian civilization hold on to its utopian values in under the shadow of an extinction-level war? How do you do that? And it came from an external source. It wasn't about the Federation rotting from within. It was about the Federation manning up and facing an enemy that it didn't even know what to do. And very, very interesting. MRZ or MERS 305 is a new member of the channel. Why, thank you for that. Crane Dan 1 says, celebrates 7 months of membership. Mr. Z 305 is now a new member and a friend of the channel, but upgraded to becoming a hero. The Doctor 755 says, Rob, I agreed with almost all of your assessments. Strange New World had been decent in my opinion, but I haven't seen this season due to boycotting Paramount Plus over the Colbert cancellation. Yeah. Oh, and here's a letter from Alex Kurtzman. And of course, he sends a tip in. One of two. Mr. Burnett, you may have been masturbating to Lieutenant Uhura longer than I've been alive. At least that's what you tell your friends at those cocktail party. Yes, I know about those. My vision is all things Trek hereafter. You will awe and wonder no more, but become witness to blood and plunder. All of your efforts will now be to masturbate unto me, as will your heirs. You will bow down before me, Jor-El. I'll tell you something. I don't have to masturbate watching Star Trek because when I watch, say, for instance, Kirk fly around the exterior of the Enterprise in Star Trek The Motion Picture, I have a hands-free orgasm. That's how powerful that imagery is. So, Darren Elliman asks a very interesting question. Do you think Boy Cavalier crashed the Maginot? The Maginot is the ship from Alien Earth. Boy Cavalier, I wouldn't put it past him. Because why not? He's clearly a little off his rocker. But I don't know, risking having a spaceship crash from orbit down onto Earth, that's tall order. I mean, why not just disable it and leave it drifting in space rather than risk losing your prize obviously it escaped into the wild. They had to go get that stuff. Well, some of it did. And I don't know if that was the best thing to do. Anyway, I have another letter. This is a quick one. Comes from Robert Coleman. Hi, Rob. In a few days, actually tomorrow, August 30th to be exact, it'll be the 10th anniversary of the passing of one of filmdom's most popular horror directors, Wes Craven. I wanted to reach out and get your thoughts on Wes Craven, who was a pioneer and an influential voice in the horror film genre. What memories do you have of seeing any of his films? What are some of your favorite Craven films, and how would you rate him in the annals of horror film history? Is he underrated, overrated, or just where he's supposed to be? Rock on, Robert. And that comes from Bob Coleman. I think I would call Wes Craven a journeyman. The first movie I ever saw of his was on a bootleg videotape, was Last House on the Left. And to be honest, it's one of the cornerstones of the R&R genre. It was rough, man. I saw it when I was 13, and it was harsh. It was really harsh. I'm not a fan of sexual violence against women in movies. It's tough. I mean, if you're going to go there, it's something that I find difficult to watch just because I like women so much, and it's hard for me to see them desecrated in that way. I still can't watch Irreversible all the way through, but that movie packed a punch. And then the second, I kind of went in order. I mean, I saw Hills Have Eyes, which I thought was great. I mean, for what it is, I loved it. I thought it was terrific. And in terms of his horror genre films, I think obviously A Nightmare on Elm Street, the combination of the slasher genre and the fantasy elements really elevated the slasher genre, took it to a new and interesting place. I really like Nightmare on Elm Street. I really like New Nightmare, but I think probably his best movie. And then he made that movie, was it The Red Violin? I forget the name of it, but he made a movie that was non-horror that was also very respectable. But I do think, the first Scream is probably my favorite movie of his. And I would add the director's cut of Scream. But definitely, I mean, Last House on the Left and Hills Have Eyes are cornerstones of 1970s exploitation cinema. You can't take away from what he contributed to the genre. And Nightmare, obviously, is a great cornerstone movie. People are watching it now. It's 41 years old. And then New Nightmare was also a really interesting take. And then, of course, interestingly enough, it hasn't been put out yet, but I wrote an essay for the Lionsgate Limited website about Jacob's Ladder. And Bruce Joel Rubin, who wrote Brainstorm, he won an Academy Award for writing Ghost. He wrote the script. Well, he adapted a novel that became Deadly Friend that Wes Craven directed, which is a fun enough little film, as a PG horror film goes. So, yeah, Wes Craven, I'm a fan. And it's great that that I got this letter out before. I didn't realize he passed away 10 years ago tomorrow. So, what a great letter. This one comes to us from Kenny Crayley Jr. Hey, Rob, and members of the Post-Geek Singularity. I hope you, Rob, are doing well. And I wanted to talk all things, of course, Superman, Super Family. First off, I loved Superman, directed by James Gunn. I laughed. I cried. But most of all, I felt joy out of a Superman film again, and I've not felt that way about a big screen Superman since Superman 2 in 1981. I look forward to more of this universe in the DC universe, including Supergirl coming out in 2026. But I think since 2015, Superman media in film and TV plus animation have been giving us joy again. From Supergirl to Superman and Lois, My Adventures with Superman, and now Superman in 2025. That's not to say that the DCEU Superman films were not good. Heck, I like some aspects of them, but what they were doing with Superman and Supergirl on TV and where the DC universe is going with those characters, I'm excited for the future. Thanks, Rob, and keep up the super amazing work. Sincerely, longtime watcher and listener, and Superman Super Family fan, Kenny Crayley Jr. from Ohio. Well, Kenny, it's nice to hear that you enjoyed that. I think there's been a lot of great Superman media. After Batman the Animated Series, I thought Superman the Animated Series was terrific. I really liked Justice League. Was Justice League Unlimited? I thought there was a lot of great episodes, and they adapted some very classic Superman stories. So that was a lot of fun, too. And I thought Superman and Lois was terrific. I thought they did a phenomenal job giving Superman 2 kids. Was a great way to go. And I think it really, really worked out well. So, absolutely. And, yeah, I can't fault you there. Here's one that I just got today. Here's a letter that I just got today. It's another Star Trek related letter. Comes to us from Andrew Riley. Hi, Rob. I've always seen Star Trek as a vision of hope, scientific wonder, and possibility, with certain drawbacks given that Starfleet is a semi-military organization which carries a certain undercurrent of darker possibilities, which Trek explores to varying degrees in each series, like the Mirror Universe or DS9 being the most direct and asking the question, how far can the Federation fall? Not everyone sees it that way, however, and that's fine. Not everything we love is so clean and pure that it has no shadow. Like people, our popular culture carries baggage. Some of it ridiculous, some of it befuddling, and some sinister. Whether it's within the text of the story and or the development of the project, i.e. Apocalypse Now's production lived up to the movie's title, how The Lion King was apparently stressful as fuck to make, and up to crunch culture in gaming where renderers are pushed to the brink, there's usually more than meets the eye bringing our favorite stories to life. I'm curious as to your thoughts on someone's take that Star Trek is basically propaganda. The establishment allows it to be shown because it supports the system in place. As Joker would say, it's part of the plan. A YouTuber known as Damien Walter, I'm very familiar with Damien Walter, has made a series of videos using his research and love of science fiction to pick beloved properties apart to see what really lies underneath. I think he's relishing in his own brilliance here and making grand reaches in his assertions. A few things he says might ring true, but his thesis is far too grim. Not simply because of my love of Trek, but a seeming bias that beneath all the futurist trappings of a better tomorrow, the Federation is merely another empire, disguising itself as a democratic wonder. And Star Trek is another entry of entertainment to lure us in to allowing the powers that be to continue on until they've created a unified world government. Yes, that's where this video goes. It's a lot to throw at you, but you've got brains beneath that luxurious hair, and I'm confident your inner Vulcan will sort it out. Kirk out. P.S. I'm rewatching all of OG Trek, and my God, Menagerie still kicks. Yes, it does. It does still kick. He didn't say kicks ass. He just said still kicks. I read that wrong. So I'm going to put the link into this video. Now, I have to say I kind of have a love-hate relationship with Damien Walter and his videos. Let me put this in the live chat. I watched this propaganda video, and I thought it was pretty great. But here's the thing you have to understand. All of our fiction, all of our entertainment, all of our art, any human endeavor that we do in the artistic space is limited by the fact that we only know ourselves. We only know humanity. We only know, like, our history and where we're going. And we don't even know that much of our own history. We only go back so far. And I would say that, look, there are certain things about human beings, because remember, we are animals and we are still defined by our biology. But I think that human civilization and human beings work better in some kind of a communal position. And in order to, for instance, pool our resources and pool our work and our skills, our skill sets, in order to provide, first of all, food and shelter, and then safety for our offspring, to continue the human race. There are certain things that come along with that, organizing principles, that are going to lead us down a path which is going to be some kind of civilization. Now, is that civilization going to be democratic? Is it going to be socialist? Communist? What's it going to be? Who knows? But the problem is, because we're human beings, there's always going to be people that want to control that civilization in whatever way, shape, or form. But I would say this, and I think Damien kind of forgot about this in his video. Once, let's just assume, for the time being, that there is a large galaxy out there of all different kinds of humanoid species that have been seeded by the preservers, or even if they're not humanoid, and let's just assume there's a very intelligent group of worlds out there that we're going to experience. Those worlds, once we meet them in the far reaches of space, are not going to care very much about how Earth organized itself. They're not going to think of us, oh, you're from Cleveland, or, you're from Buenos Aires, or you're from Moscow, or you're from Seoul, or you're from Tokyo. They're not going to think that way. They're going to think you're from Terra, you're from Earth. So I think if you're extrapolating about whether it's Empire and Foundation or whatever it's going to be, that you have to have like some organizing principle. Otherwise, it's going to be difficult to believe that humanity became a spacefaring race. In order to, and look, the idea of a one world government, I mean, we've seen that even in The Expanse. Earth was a world, Mars was a world, the Belters had their own worlds out there, and they had their own government, and people were arguing, and I think human beings are always going to argue because, I mean, if you go to a PTA meeting, people argue. You know, if you have a drama club, if you're waiting for Guffman, there's a whole hierarchy in that. In your book club, if you have one, there's always somebody that runs the book club or wants to tell you what to read. It's just human nature. That's the way that we're built. And I think this idea, look, we have a lot of, you want to start reading up on the Dark Enlightenment and Peter Thiel and his tech bros and what they think. And most of us lead lives of quiet desperation and aren't really going to contribute. If you think about it, how many people on Earth right now, how am even I contributing to the greater good doing this YouTube show? Am I? You know, one of my favorite Twilight Zone episodes when I was a kid, just because it scared the shit out of me and I didn't really get it, was the obsolete man. First of all, I didn't know what the word obsolete meant. You know, I didn't know, but I probably learned it from that and the Ultimate Computer episode of, you know, give my regards to Captain Dunzel. But the obsolete man, you know, that's why I love science fiction. What does it mean? It drove me to the dictionary. What does the word obsolete mean? And then, of course, as I got older, controlled obsolescence. Obsolete. Obsolete's one of the great, I think one of the great words. It's kind of an onomatopoeia. You know, it's one of the great words in the English language. And if you watch The Obsolete Man, it's scary. The word obsolete scares me. Even to this day, when I say it, I'm like, nothing good comes of being obsolete. But, so, you know, you could watch his video, and he does say it's a democratic society is being propagandized. We have to organize humanity into some workable. I mean, when you have millions of people at scale, how are you gonna make a society? There's 8 billion people on Earth. Everyone's looking for a way to control all those people, so we don't blow ourselves up. I mean, unfortunately, the people at the top want to control us for probably nefarious reasons. Everyone's making profit. You know, the real problem with humanity, in my mind, is at the end of the day, our aspirations are pretty base. Like, if you have lots of money, you know, some people like Elon Musk, give it up for him. That Starship landing in the ocean, in the Indian Ocean, was pretty impressive. But at the end of the day, you know, what do people want? They want to have fast cars, hot women, cool apartments, you know, Picasso's on the wall. I mean, we're simple creatures. And until we change our ways, and I don't think we're going to change our ways very much unless we can significantly expand our lifespans, or we can become denizens of the digital world or something. Until our lives of quiet desperation in these bodies are somehow changed and expanded, we're going to be kind of stuck the way we are. And maybe if disclosure happens and One Atlas, or whatever that thing's called, actually turns out to be an extraterrestrial device that's come to check on our progress or something, until something fundamentally changes the way we look at ourselves, we're stuck. We're stuck with our own biology. We're stuck with our own ideology. We're stuck here on this planet in our lifespans that have been increased, even though they're coming back. I mean, maybe if a Children of Man situation arises and our fertility rates drop to 0 and there really is no more human beings born on the earth, maybe we'll change our ways somehow. I don't know. But I don't think it's propaganda to ever aspire to a society that is functional and works. The problem is there's always people that want to subjugate the rest of man underneath you. But I would suggest watching his video. I put the link in there. It's compelling stuff. I mean, I think it's kind of hogwash, but, you know, why do so many science fiction novelists who write about the future write about galactic empires? You know, the Landsrat in Dune. Not just Arrakis, but everybody, you know. Not just Giddy Prime or not just... that's compelling reading. And as humanity, look at Foundation. You know, I think humanity always, we tend to look, Most of us are followers. We want somebody to tell us what to do. Ultimately, at the end of the day, we need people to tell us what to do. Otherwise, we're not exactly the most motivated group of people or the most motivated group of animals. You know, we're not. We can afford, because we now live in a world where you can be lazy. I mean, look at me. I should lose 60 pounds and, you know, not be drinking or as much as I do. But, you know, if I had to, like, get my own food every day and run away from predators, my life would be very different. But since I don't have to do that, other than the tax man and the mortgage company and everybody else, it's a different kind of running away. But I don't think it's propaganda to want to see a human civilization that is functional where everybody can flourish underneath it. I don't think that there's anything wrong with that. And I don't necessarily think it's propaganda. The kind of civilization, I mean, nowadays, and again, I see people are talking about socialism and communism because they're lazy. It's too hard. I just want somebody to give me what I want, and I don't want to work for it. That's kind of what I see lately. I mean, I was watching the really interesting, the Trigonometry podcast has become, I think, must watch. And of course, they had Benjamin Netanyahu on, and they interviewed him, and they're getting a lot of pushback from various quarters about that interview. And then they did a video responding to the responses to the interview they did. But it's really interesting to listen to their perspective on all of this, and I think it's worth a listen. And check it out. So I want to thank Andrew Riley for writing it in and giving me that link to pass along. I think very much worth watching. And let's see what I got here. Brian Huckabee wrote this one. Rob, I'd like to weigh in on Star Trek Strange New Worlds. I'm not a very grandiose letter writer, but I'll try my best to be engaging. First, I'd like to say it was a pleasure talking to you about physical media after Starship Smackdown at this year's San Diego Comic-Con. That was very fun. I'm also a fellow editor, and I enjoyed your comments during episode 1058 about the impact of editing when it comes to storytelling. The raid is rad. Go Rob. Okay, now, Star Trek Strange New Worlds. Bear with me. When Strange New Worlds first started, I was excited. We finally get to be back on board the Enterprise, always a good thing. The design was appealing on the exterior, although the interior is a bit too flashy looking, and I found this group of actors top-notch. Anson Mount is quite charming as Pike, sort of a hybrid of Shatner and Jeffrey Hunter, and I think Ethan Peck is an outstanding actor to continue the character of Spock, right up there with Zachary Quinto. Personally, I was into the relationship with Nurse Chapel mostly because I enjoyed the chemistry between the two actors and was excited at first to see something a little new that we've never seen before. After all, we know where they end up, so I knew at a certain point they'd have to pivot away from it, right? And if I'm being honest, by the end of Season 1, I was actually a fan accepting that this is a different reality because too many things started to counter what we know as canon from TOS, like the Spock-Chapel relationship. I guess I had this feeling because I was so put off by the constant tears and drama flooding from the frames of Star Trek Discovery. Everyone was so emotional on that ship that I was stunned it was a military vessel. Strange New Worlds was bringing back the fun that can be found in Star Trek. The original series blended serious and silly very nicely, which was definitely missing from Discovery. Now, flash forward to Season 2. A few more liberties are taken that I never thought I'd see on Star Trek. The musical episode. I have two opinions on that. Does a show like that fit into Star Trek as easily as it did in Buffy and Xena? Not really. Did I enjoy it anyway? I actually did, just because I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I laughed and was surprised by some of the singing voices the actors had. It's funny to watch Klingons sing like a boy band, sure, and if I recall correctly, I don't think you're a fan of Lower Decks. What I can say about that, I will say this about Lower Decks. Lower Decks has sincerity. There's a true love of the Star Trek franchise on that show. And while they did do some stories I think that are great, The humor aspect of it all, to me, it was always outside. If they had done a comedic Star Trek show that wasn't a show about people that love Star Trek and that all the characters on the show know everything about the Star Trek universe, if it was more of a character-based comedy workaday show, I think they could have really made something classic. But because it was so much of a reflection on Star Trek itself, I think the two ideas clashed. The audience already knows all the characters every time they make a Star Trek reference. All they did was remind the audience, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh, I remember that. Oh, I remember that. But if they told actually great Star Trek stories and didn't break the fourth wall and was able to do a comedic show do it in universe, I think it would have been special indeed. As it was too much of hanging out with my Star Trek friends, hanging out at the bar, and we all just sit there and throw references at each other because we all know them. And who can make the most clever reference of all? And it just, at the end of the day, it's like, okay, you've made a lot of references, but what's our substantive conversation of the evening going to be? What I can say about Star Trek Lower Decks is that it's the one Star Trek show that finally clicked with my daughter. And it was the only Star Trek show the whole family constantly watched. Well, that alone is reason enough. It's an entertaining show that played nicely in the Star Trek universe with hilarious references. So I especially enjoyed seeing the show's characters, Boimler and Mariner, crossing over into the real world to interact with our crew. It felt like the series' version of Trouble with Tribbles. I was all in, and honestly, Jack Quaid and Tawny Newsome owned that episode. I will grant you that. It felt like the other actors were just trying to keep up. But despite all of these ludicrous plots, we get this series version of the Gorn. Oh, the Gorn. What is happening here? I don't even know where to begin. Season 3, to quote the great Sam Beckett from Quantum Leap, oh boy. Every episode I've seen so far has just pissed me off. Trelane and Q, really? Just thoroughly disappointed me. I guess I so wanted Strange New Worlds to be great after my disappointment with Discovery that I accepted so much of their silliness and canon crapping. I like that, canon crapping. Alas, Season 3 has done its job of letting me down. They just keep rehashing old stories poorly and visiting very few Strange New Worlds. Where are they? Where are these great stories? Even Spock and Chapel's story is completely dried up. It's such a sappy soap opera now. The bridge crew is so lackluster, and I just watched a brief promo for Season 4 that has Pike as a Muppet. Again, an idea they took from Angel or other shows. Strange New Worlds, let me just say, for any of you potential showrunners out there, the idea of your show is to stake its own claim, tell its own stories. Don't rip off classic science fiction stories or novels. Don't steal from your favorite show growing up because you're so bereft of any ideas of originality that you'd have to go back and steal from Buffy or Angel or whatever. Enough of the Joss Whedon, appreciation. We get it. That was the show that changed your life because maybe it told you that you were okay to be this kind of person or that kind of person, or maybe it reaffirmed your own identity. Good for fucking you. Stop ripping it off. Star Trek was a show that really, a lot of the time, it did rehash things. Balance of Terror was Run Silent, Run Deep, a submarine film. Great, but it put its own spin on it in a very, very, very smart way. And then it sprinkled on top of that, it introduced an alien race and showed that these alien races, while adversarial, had honor and they were to be respected. They elevated that material. Strange New Worlds gives us a musical episode where Klingons are earthbound boy bands. And by the way, why weren't the Klingons singing opera? Why were they a boy band? Why? Because the people making Strange New Worlds have never watched Star Trek. And if they have, they looked at a BuzzFeed article and watched the 10 best episodes of this, which are atypical episodes anyway. But anyway. This season and stunts like that are pushing this show way down for me. And as someone who likes seasons 1 and 2 to a certain extent, I am losing that desire to revisit them now. Like you, I keep pushing forward, and I'll keep watching them, hoping for that one episode where I can finally say, now that was Star Trek. And that comes from Brian Huckabee, and his YouTube channel is Huck's Pop Culture Cafe. That's Hucks Pop Culture Cafe, one word. Or on Instagram at hucks.pop.culture.cafe. Fucking Captain James Tiberius Kirk. All day, every day. Twice on Sunday. Thanks for the commentary. Live long and prosper, David. Well, David, thanks for writing in. I appreciate that. Did you call me? I think you called me today. I don't know. I'll have to look into that. Now, this is an interesting letter. We're going to shift gears from Star Trek. This comes from Russell Whitfield. Any relation to Stephen? Russell Whitfield. Hi. I'm Russ, and I'm a Zachalite. It's been a few months since my last Snyder mission to induct my partner into the cult of our Lord and Savior with a viewing of Man of Steel. Her comment post-rapture was that she thought it was good, but preferred things like Office Space and Harold and Kumar Go to White Castle. Heresy. If she wasn't the most beautiful, kind, and wonderful person in the world, she would have been cast out of Valhalla and laughed at. But she is all of those things and more. So rest assured that one day she will join us in the sun. Note, I refer to the actual Valhalla as depicted in the tattooed slow-mo Messiah's Twilight of the Gods, and not the apostate versions in other blasphemous media. The Snyderverse. We savored it. We rejoiced with great gladness. Great gladness. Remembered always, for we are joined by it. We are one under the Snyder Cut. We remember it well, that great victory, so that in the years ahead we could say, I was there that night with Snyder, the king. For it is the doom of franchises that they forget. All right, I'll stop. But I did want to weigh in on the tail end of this summer 2025, I did want to weigh in on the tail of this Superman 2025 talk. The discourse around the box office, the merits for some, the lack thereof for others, in Gunn's take. The take that everyone claimed they wanted since Superman 2. The bright and hopeful take. The take that would please everyone at long last. Except that it didn't. Gunn nearly sticks the landing, but ultimately fails because he was unable or unwilling to rein in his own storytelling proclivities. The film almost needed a laugh track, and the plucky band of misfits who form a family trope has no place in a Superman movie. At least, not a movie that introduces us to a new, or if you prefer more traditional iteration of the character. You cannot sideline Superman for a chunk of his own film to focus on so-called cooler niche characters. Well, you can, but then you end up with another divisive movie. Let's face it, Rob, no one would have put money on that word being used for Gunn's work. It's been the label applied to Snyder's iteration since day one, but Gunn's? I was surprised. But should I be? Going to a James Gunn superhero movie and expecting not to get a James Gunn superhero movie is the same as going to a Chris Nolan film and expecting to not get a Chris Nolan film. Gunn does what he does. I never thought he had the right sensibility for the character, and the frustrating thing is that he almost sticks the landing. Almost. But his proclivities, as I said, sabotage the film. That aside, though, I agree with your assessment. Superman 2025 was great fun. Wildly entertaining, perfectly cast, brilliantly performed. It was good. It was fine. Had a blast with it. But ultimately, it's forgettable. Already, internet conversation is starting to die out. It's almost in the rearview mirror. And when people do talk about it, it's always in comparison with Snyder's movies. The discourse around the Snyderverse has been going on since 2013, over a decade. In that time, no one was comparing Singer's Superman Returns to Snyder's work. They weren't. No one was hearkening back to it as if only that had continued. But what did happen was as asinine as it was awful. An example of all the worst parts of the social media anonymity era played out. The discussion became less about Snyder's movies and more about making oneself right on the internet. The last word had to be had. The dissenter had to be owned. The dopamine victory rush needed to be felt. So when it came to Superman 2025's box office, gun gooners were desperate for a smash hit so they could get on Reddit and shit all over the Snyder Bros. Meanwhile, the cultists were equally thirsty for a crushing flop so they could get on Reddit and shit all over the gun fans. As it transpired, no one won. The film did okay, it didn't flop. It wasn't a blockbuster, it did pretty well. Like the film itself, the box office was fine. But the point is, it isn't really about the movies. It's about being right on the internet. I've been party to it myself. Here's what used to grind my gears. Snyder doesn't get Superman. He doesn't understand the character. Even people who apparently owned a comic shop for 10 years have said that repeatedly. These same people never read New 52, Earth 1, or Birthright. You know who did read those things? Zack fucking Snyder. He absolutely got the character and the brief as it was given at the time. The New 52 era, the post-Nolan grimdark era, the dark and gritty DC times. The Not My Superman crowd likely hadn't read a comic book since they were all kids. And that was the John Byrne era, no doubt. Oh, come on, I'm older than that. Or had never read a comic at all, basing their assessment on animation, television, and dawn of nostalgia. But that's fine. It doesn't delegitimize Snyder's take. A new take, one we'd never seen before, one that many loved and many more hated. Or did they? Because in the wake of Superman 2025, I see more and more, those movies were actually pretty good. Conversations online. One of your observations was that Snyder's trilogy wasn't made for children. Gunn's movie certainly is. I'm in my 50s. I saw Superman the movie in the cinema, same as you. Sure, some kids may have loved Snyder's film, but Gunn's is clearly designed for them. And that's where my hope for the DC Universe lies, that 8, 9, and 10-year-olds will be like we were back in the 70s, meeting Superman perhaps for the first time, falling in love with superheroes as kids and carrying that with them for the rest of their lives. The imagination connoisseurs of the future. It's strange to think that if the DCU had launched back in 2013 and the Snyderverse in 2025, both might have been huge. Back then, Gunn's vision would have fit right in with the MCU tone. And now, maybe, Snyder's darker canvas would have gone gangbusters in these, frankly, darker times. And the irony of all that is that my fellow Zackalites want that animated DC EU on Max. We'd better hope and pray that the DC Universe is a juggernaut in the MCU mind. Why? Because if it's that successful, the cult won't be a threat. It won't be a competing vision. It'll be a cool Elseworlds thing, like Marvel's What If? A cartoon that none of the actors have to get in shape for. A project that won't take years out of their schedules. It'd be relatively economical to make, and I think a lot of people would love it. Well, I would think that because I'm a self-confessed Zackalite. But I would say this. Snyder's vision was unique, at least cinematically. It didn't, like every other cinematic iteration since 1978, try and ride on the coattails of Richard Donner's magnum opus. No Kiss Curl, no Trunks, no John Williams cues. It stands alone, a singular vision that doesn't try and evoke past glories, but attempts to tell a Superman tale for the time in which it was made. In 10 years, if Superman 2025 is being talked about at all, it'll be in the context of the movie that kicked off the DCU. Or it'll still be being compared to Snyder's movies. Go on any thread on social media. Superman 2025's quality is always framed in comparison to the Snyder films, whether to say it's a million times better or a million times worse, but the comparison exists all the same. That doesn't actually mean one is better than the other. Superman's been around nearly 100 years. One take is legit as the next. It's just what you prefer at the end of the day. I think that we forgot that in the anonymous milieu of online flame wars. Let me try that once again. The third time's the charm. I think that we forgot that in the anonymous milieu of the online flame wars. And really, any iteration of Superman would be disappointed with how his fans or how we have conducted ourselves over this. And finally, I'd like to thank you, Rob. I used to listen to loads of live streams, but the constant negativity grift eventually drove me away. Robservations, however, has been consistent in your credo of, I want everything to be great. And that since 2009, Star Trek has been shit. I never finish your show feeling angry, pissed off, and snarling at Disney, Warner Brothers, or whomever. Robservations is just great entertainment. Insightful, funny, and as someone with a few scripts in play, often helpful. I even made a lifelong friend through your show. I was on Midnight Metal and got to chatting to RM when she was co-hosting. After that, she and I did Sunday brunch for a year or two. She stayed with me here in the UK so she could go to Star Wars Celebration, and we've been friends for years now. I also met Mario Lopez for dinner in Portugal with my aforementioned and not at all heretical partner, Wendy. So thanks again, Rob. You're a legend. All the best, Russ. Well, if that's not a great letter, I don't know what is, and not just because I got a little fluffed there at the end. Well, thank you, Russ. I appreciate that. Look, and I would say a Zacholite. I love that. I think that term belongs to you. I haven't seen Zacholite online. Look, I'll tell everybody. Look, maybe I should take a swig before I say this. Cheers. I gotta say, I'm going to start a big workout routine. Everybody wants me to get back in shape. I only have one more of these after this. In honor of David Sylvian, September's here again. I'm going to get in shape, I promise. Drop those 60 pounds by Christmas. You wait and see. Anyway, I would dare say I kind of love Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Dawn of Justice, and Zack Snyder's Justice League. I enjoy watching them. The same way that I enjoy watching, say, extreme French horror. Zack Snyder's Superman movies are Superman extreme. I don't think they're particularly fun. I don't think that they put a smile on my face. But as I've always said, I appreciate that he's doing something. I mean, it's like going to a metal concert. I mean, Midnight Metal was inspired by Zack Snyder's Justice League. And here's the thing. Everybody's like, we want Snyder to finish. Look, even if Zack Snyder made another Justice League movie, we know how it's going to end. Spoiler alert, the Justice League is going to defeat Darkseid and save the world. I don't need to see that. Zack Snyder's 4-hour Zack Snyder's Justice League is great as it is. Is it a cliffhanger? Sure. But we already know these stories. We've seen these stories a million times. I like his vision of the Justice League. I like those singing Finnish girls that are singing the hymn to Aquaman as he swims away. Do we need to linger on that shot? No. I like that he did. I like that movie, if you look at all three of those films, whether you like Zack Snyder's vision or not, those films present a singular vision of the Justice League. And I love the Justice League. A vision we're not going to get anywhere else. A hardcore 1970s airbrushed van-painted version of the heavy metal Justice League. And, whether it's Gwar, whether it's Metallica, whether it's Slayer, whatever your brand of speed metal, hard metal, hair metal, metal light, whatever. It's the heavy metal version of the Justice League. And I like it. I like it. I think the problem is that's not what those movies should be for the general public. And as Russ pointed out, if kids can't watch your Superman movie because it's too harrowing, maybe that wasn't the best thing to do with the characters. That's all I'm saying. But I like the movies. I own them all in 4K. I even own Man of Steel in 3D. And no, you can't borrow it. So, anyway, there's my secret. I've let it out. But I don't understand why people... I've always said I like Man of Steel. I look at it more like a first contact story, a science fiction story. But yeah, I like those movies. I like the vision. They're fun to watch. The sound design's great. So... 6 Scale Mafia celebrates 26 months of membership. Speaking of TNG, thanks again, Rob. You are the man. Appreciate the box set. Yes, I had an extra Picard box set that has all of the Next Generation episodes, the whole Picard saga, and I sent it to Anthony. And he will like it. So you're welcome, sir. And thank you for everything you do for me. Right back at you, buddy. 1001 Johnny, who's a PGS hero for 27 months, says, what if they cancel Strange New Worlds next season with the same cast as Strange New World? Instead, they reboot Flash Gordon straight from the Sundays. If not that, Buck Rogers. I think it would be a better show. I think the creative team would be better. The real Thomas Logan says, I disagree. Hang on. I disagree on The Shining, Bobby. No other auteur could have made that film as iconic or poignant. Same goes for Jack's legendary turn. Rank Kubrick's films. I mean, look, I don't disagree with you. I still think The Shining is a B movie. It's Kubrick's B horror film. It's his dip into a flat-out genre movie. A horror film. Now you want me to rank Kubrick's films. That's tough because every time I see a Kubrick movie, it goes straight to the top of the list. You know, I can't. I just watched Barry Lyndon again. I love Barry Lyndon so much, which is a movie I didn't love when I first saw it. I mean, I probably would have to rank. I mean, if you really think about it, you could make a case that Dr. Strangelove is Kubrick's best film. I love A Clockwork Orange. I think, to be honest, A Clockwork Orange and 2001: A Space Odyssey, but Clockwork Orange is more entertaining. However, I feel guilty about that because Clockwork Orange blew my mind when I first saw it. When I was 13 years old, I watched it twice back to back. And as a 13-year-old, there's a lot of, I mean, because it was transgressive, and when I was a kid, it showed me things I'd never seen before. I have a real love for it, but I also like what it has to say about free will, the nature of free will and human nature in general. But what I love about his films is because they're Kubrickian, they always hit me different. Whether, like, look, I think a more traditional narrative, and you work with Vladimir Nabokov, was Lolita. You know, watching Peter Sellers and James Mason in Lolita and Shelley Winters in Lolita, I mean, that's a great movie. I love The Killing. I think The Killing is incredible. It's an incredible movie. Now, Spartacus is good. I don't think it's top-tier Kubrick because, you know, he was brought on board. He didn't really control it as much as his other movies, but obviously it's a great effort. And I think that Eyes Wide Shut is also a really interesting movie that doesn't. Remember, people are always trying to say that Eyes Wide Shut was really Kubrick, like the moon landing. He was trying to say something about the adrenochrome Democrats, Satan worshipping, adrenochrome drinking elites, but they forget it was based on a Arthur Schnitzler novel, basically called Dream Novel, that came out in the 20s. So, I mean, maybe it is, but Kubrick, he left Hollywood long ago. And I think if Kubrick actually made a movie about if there really were secret lizard people, Democrat elites that were torturing children in the basement of pizza parlors and drinking their adrenochromized blood, that Kubrick would make a movie that was more interesting to deal with those topics than Eyes Wide Shut was. Because really, Eyes Wide Shut is Kubrick's most romantic movie. Because basically, at the end of the day, it's like, look, man, you got a hot wife. Just go home and fuck her. Don't worry about it. She confided with you when she was stoned. She told you a truth that she didn't act on it, but she told you something was going on in her brain. That movie is really all about how Tom Cruise is like, you can handle it, dude. She's with you. You're a successful doctor. Eyes Wide Shut is about we men are chumps. If you have a hot wife, you can't not expect her to have a few fantasies that don't involve you. That movie is about how Nicole Kidman loves her wife. Oh, pardon me. Nicole Kidman, as his wife, loves Bill, the character that, I mean, you know, she's got basically this Machiavellian European dude that's like, oh, why are you married? That's such an archaic tradition. And she's all drunk, and she doesn't go with him. She loves her husband, and her husband can't deal with truth, can't deal with frank truth, and he goes on a little adventure, you know, during Christmas, and his medical ID opens up the gates to all the different realms that he goes into, and even he doesn't give into his temptations. He could get into a lot worse trouble. Where's Nick Nightingale? I don't know, but I think in terms of it shifts around. I mean, I love Full Metal Jacket, but do I think Full Metal Jacket's top tier? No. Do I love The Shining? Yes. Do I think Shining's top tier? No. I get a lot more out of Barry Lyndon, Clockwork Orange, 2001, Doctor Strangelove, Lolita, The Killing. I mean, I wish Kubrick made more movies. It's a good question, though. It's a good question. Darth Plato has been a member for 56 months. Cyanagiri has been a member for 33 months. Captain Robert April has been a member for 37 months. Boy, Captain Robert April, you know what? I actually thought about you the other night. I'm like, man, I wish I was sitting next to Captain Robert April right now. Although we probably would have both committed seppuku. We would have mutually or killed each other simply to put ourselves out of our misery. Jason Webster says, Rob, have you seen Primitive War 2025? No, I can't wait to see it, though. I enjoyed it and recommend it. Solid and entertaining, and all on a production budget of $7 million. That's what you can do now. Vietnam War with dinosaurs, count me in. And done with conviction. Not like an Asylum movie, not like a Sharknado film. 1001 Johnny says, wait, we can call you, Rob? Sure. You can't call me. I have a phone. It's right here. It's my Black Mirror. But I've always got Shatner. Shatner's on my Black Mirror from Free Enterprise. How self-aggrandizing is that? The Brujo says, for Lower Decks, I'd venture a lot of us didn't have sci-fi group or cons to banter with. Even online here in Australia, only 37% had internet access in 2000. Is that true? Well, then you must. I mean, I can see that. Then must be glorious watching Lower Decks. Why am I having streaming trouble? Why is that? Major Chai said, or pardon me, 1001 Johnny says, Russ and I must hang our capes in the same fortress of solitude. Zachalites indeed. See, Zachalites, you're going to call yourself a Zachalite. Major Chai says, I'm seeing Jaws in the theater with my daughter tomorrow afternoon. She'll be dressed as Bruce, and I'll be dressed as the victim. We'll send pics. By the way, how cool is it? You know, I got to check my Harkins. I would love to see Jaws. Do you know, I've only seen Jaws in the theater twice, and I'd love to go see it again. I mean, I think Jaws is it's one of the great movies of all time, and it still works. So, there you go. I have one other letter. Hang on, do I have one more letter? I have one other letter that's a different change of pace about the Gaza situation that I'm not going to read on this show. I mean, I'll read it on a different show, but not this show, only because it would I think it would harsh our mellow. I think I'm going to bring an end to this reader letter show. I will be back trying to get some more shows in. Got to get one in tomorrow and one in the next day, and then Dieter, of course, is coming back. Max Allan Collins, for anyone interested, is in the hospital. He had a little bit of problems after his defib process. He's having a pacemaker put in today. Of course, he wrote True Noir, and he's such a great guy. And we are going to talk about the greatness that is Airport 79, which, if you know, you know. So I won't be on the show again this week. It'll just be Dieter and I, and that's okay. We can handle the show, but my thoughts go out to Max, his lovely wife, and everyone over there, his son Nathan, and their grandkid, and all of that. So he'll pull through. Max is he's a warrior, but he won't be on the show. Why? I don't know why it keeps doing that. So on that note, I'm going to end this show. First of all, I want to thank everybody for generously supporting this channel via super chats and tips and memberships and all of that. I want to thank everybody for writing in. Please remember, put Robservations first in the title of your letter, in the subject heading. Put Robservations and then what it's about, because I search for letters because I get so much email. But you can send it directly to my email, rmburnett1701@gmail.com, and I will read I just assume if you're going to send me letters, you're going to want me to read them on the show. Also, I'm getting ready to launch the short story competition. I'm still dealing with the rules and regulations on it, but that should be very, very, very exciting. But I want to get it up in the next, say, week and get that thing rolling. I'll probably start a dedicated web page for it. And if you want to write a short story, now that's why, look, the entry fee is steep, but it's only because I want people to really send me great stuff. I figure it'll weed out the wheat from the chaff. So, and everybody's story is going to get looked at and edited, and I'm really looking forward to publishing that book. My goal is to have the book in everybody's hands by my birthday, May 15th, 2026. The hardcover, slip-cased, the imagination connoisseurs for all of you who are going to participate. So the way we're going to do it is I'm going to run the short story contest, and then we're going to crowdfund the printing of the book because, I can't afford it myself, and I'm not going to do another crowdfunding campaign until the True Noir crowdfunding campaign, all the perks are delivered. And by the way, you can still get in on the Tomy Klingon D7 diecast battle cruiser. Go check that out if you want to get it. If you ever thought that $700 for a diecast Klingon battle cruiser was what you needed in your life, go to Tomy, sign up. It's badass. I myself, I thought I was going to get 2, but that's a little excessive, but I got to go for the 2-tone version. So there you go. And on that note, every person you meet has a story to tell that you have yet to hear. And all you have to do is listen. And with that, I say to all of you, have a better night.